Body Double opened like a hypnotic act of voyeurism from 1980s Hollywood, a world where desire, betrayal, and illusion pulled every face into the dark. But after the film ended, reality was filled with addiction, illness, divorce, early death, and careers that disappeared without a sound. And among them, one woman was quietly fighting a pain no one could see. Melanie Griffith as Hollybody. Melanie Griffith did not enter Body Double quietly. She walked in like someone who knew exactly what kind of room she was disturbing. As Hollybody, she was supposed to be the fantasy, the adult film girl with the blonde hair, the sharp mouth and the body everybody thought they understood before she even spoke. But Melanie gave Holly something stranger and much harder to forget timing. She made her funny. She made her awake. In a movie obsessed with men watching women from a distance. Holly was the one woman who seemed to understand the whole dirty game. She was only 26 when Brian De Palma cast her, still carrying the complicated glow of being Tippi Hedren's daughter, still fighting to be seen as more than Hollywood bloodline, beauty and trouble. The role almost went to real adult film actress Annette Haven, and Linda Hamilton reportedly passed before The Terminator changed her life instead. Then Melanie stepped in. And suddenly Holly was no longer just a provocation. She had a pulse. That pulse mattered. After Body Double, Melanie's life did not become simple. It became louder. She found acclaim in Something Wild, then soared with Working Girl, earning an Oscar nomination and becoming one of the defining faces of late 80s Hollywood. But behind the bright smile came rehab relapse marriages that made headlines, motherhood divorce, and the long, uncomfortable business of surviving in public. Don Johnson came back into her life twice. Antonio Banderas became another great love. Dakota Johnson became a star in her own right. Then came quieter battles, skin cancer, facial procedures, recovery, and the courage to speak openly about aging in a business that rarely forgives women for doing it. By 2026, Melanie is 68, turning 69 in August, closer to family, still connected to the industry, but no longer chasing its approval. Hollybody was watched. Melanie Griffith endured being watched. And somehow, she walked away owning the mirror. Craig Wasson as Jake Scully. Craig Wasson never looked like a man who was built to win in Body Double. That is exactly why he worked. He played Jake Scully with the nervous energy of someone who had already lost the room before he walked into it. Jake is an actor, but not the glamorous kind. He is the kind who gets fired, gets humiliated, goes home and finds his personal life collapsing in the ugliest possible way. Then, just when he is vulnerable enough to believe anything, someone hands him a beautiful house, a telescope, and a woman across the way who turns his loneliness into a trap. That is where the sickness begins. The great thing about Wasson's performance is that he does not try to make Jake cool. He lets him sweat, he lets him panic, he lets him be small. In a movie full of mirrors, bodies, fake identities, and sexual danger, Jake is not the master of the game. He is the poor fool who thinks he is watching the movie when really the movie has been watching him the whole time. Before Body Double, Wasson had already shown he was more than just another handsome face. He appeared in Roller Coaster, then earned serious attention with Four Friends, a performance that even brought him a Golden Globe nomination. But Hollywood has a strange way of treating actors like him. Talented, sensitive, a little too hard to package, close to the spotlight but never quite swallowed by it. After Body Double, he found another cult audience in A Nightmare. On Elm Street, 3 dream warriors playing Dr. Neil Gordon, one of the few adults in that nightmare who actually seemed to care. Then the roles became smaller. Television, supporting parts, quiet appearances. By the mid-2000s, Wasson had nearly slipped out of film completely. But he did not disappear. He changed rooms. His voice became the new stage-narrating audiobooks by Stephen King, John Grisham, James Ellroy, and others. Maybe that makes sense. A man who once played someone trapped by looking found a second life by being heard. By 2026, Craig Wasson is 72, living far from the noisy center of Hollywood, rarely appearing in public, no longer chasing the camera's approval. Jake Scully kept staring through the telescope, and Craig Wasson finally put it down. Deborah Shelton as Gloria Revelle. Deborah Shelton barely speaks in Body Double. That is the strange part. She leaves a mark before she ever really gets a voice. She plays Gloria Revelle, the woman across the way, rich, polished, lonely-looking, moving behind glass like some forbidden dream Jake Scully was never supposed to touch. At first, the film wants you to look at her the way Jake does from a distance through a telescope, with curiosity sliding into obsession. Gloria feels less like a person and more like a secret somebody left under a spotlight. Then the movie punishes you for looking. That is what makes her role so nasty and so memorable. Gloria is beautiful, yes, but De Palma does not let that beauty stay safe. He turns it into bait, then into fear, then into one of the most brutal images in the film. And Deborah Shelton, even with limited screen time, gives Gloria the kind of stillness that makes the whole thing worse. She looks like someone who has spent her life being watched, and maybe she had. Before Hollywood, Shelton had already worn the crown. Miss USA 1970, first runner-up at Miss Universe. The kind of woman cameras were trained to admire before anyone asked what she actually wanted. So when she played Gloria, there was something painfully fitting about it. A former beauty queen playing a woman trapped inside the gaze of men. And then came the colder twist. Her dialogue was dubbed by Helen Shaver in post-production. Her face stayed, her body stayed, but her voice was taken out. That detail almost feels like the whole movie in miniature. After Body Double, Deborah found a longer life on television, most famously as Mandy Winger on Dallas, where her beauty became familiar to millions instead of just mysterious for a few terrible minutes. Her career slowed over time, but she never became a tragic Hollywood cautionary tale. She simply kept going. Quieter than the image people remembered. By 2026, Deborah Shelton is 77. Gloria Revelle may have been turned into a nightmare, but Deborah walked out of the frame with something the camera could not steal. Her silence still echoes. Gregg Henry as Sam Bouchard. Gregg Henry has a very dangerous kind of smile. Not the kind where a villain walks in and the audience immediately thinks, oh, this guy is trouble. No, he is more dangerous because he looks far too trustworthy. In Body Double, Gregg plays Sam Bouchard, the friend who appears exactly when Jake Scully is falling apart. Jake has just lost his role, lost his girlfriend, and lost any sense of control over his own life. Then Sam steps in, friendly, relaxed, talking like a man who only wants to help. A drink. An offer of a place to stay. A beautiful house. A telescope pointed toward the mysterious woman across the way. It sounds like salvation, but really it is a trap wrapped in velvet. And Gregg sells that trap brilliantly. What makes Sam so effective is that he does not need to growl glare or announce that he is dangerous. Gregg Henry understands something many villain actors do not. The scariest person is often the one who makes you feel comfortable first. He lets Sam smile just enough, speak softly just enough, stand back just enough. By the time the truth comes out, the audience is not only shocked by the twist, they feel uncomfortable because they realize they trusted him too. Before Body Double, Gregg was not an unfamiliar face. He had worked steadily in television and film and had already appeared in Brian De Palma's Scarface. And De Palma clearly liked that shadowy energy because he later brought Gregg into several more of his films. It was the kind of quiet collaboration that says a lot. The director knew exactly who to call when he needed an ordinary man to make the frame feel cold. After that, Gregg Henry became one of Hollywood's familiar faces. You cannot quite name a label that sounds unfair, but is actually the natural territory of extremely durable actors. He appeared in Payback: The Hunt for the BTK Killer, and then unexpectedly entered a new generation's movie memory as Peter Quill's grandfather in Guardians of the Galaxy. Off-screen, he has lived much more quietly, with his wife theatre director Lisa James in Los Angeles while continuing to act and pursue music. By 2026, Gregg Henry is 74 years old. He does not need the lead role to be remembered. He only needs to appear for a few minutes, smile once in the right way, and suddenly the audience feels that something is not right. Some actors grow older and soften. Gregg Henry only grows more like a secret that has not been opened yet. Keep watching with Legends of Classic Hollywood and tell us below which cast member's fate still refuses to leave you. Dennis Franz as Rubin. Dennis Franz did not need much screen time in Body Double. He only needed a cheap vampire movie set, an actor panicking inside a coffin, and a yelling voice that sounded like it wanted to burn the whole production down. He plays Rubin, the director of the horror movie Jake Scully is working on. Jake is trapped in a coffin, sweat pouring out of him, his claustrophobia dragging him down like an invisible hand. Rubin has no time for anyone's fear. He shouts. He snaps. He looks at Jake as if the entire world of cinema is collapsing because one man cannot stay still inside a wooden box. It is funny, But it hurts, because Rubin does not just feel like a difficult director. He feels like Hollywood in miniature, hot-tempered impatient, always demanding that people keep performing even when they are breaking apart inside. And Dennis Franz understood that kind of man too well. Before Body Double, he had already become a familiar face in Brian De Palma's world, appearing in the Fury Dressed to Kill blowout, Scarface, and then here. De Palma liked using Franz because he did not have that polished Hollywood shine. He felt real hard, rough around the edges, like a man who had lived through a few things and did not need to explain any of them. That was not accidental. Franz had served in the US Army and Vietnam before pursuing acting. Maybe that is why he always carried a kind of weight that is very hard to fake. Even in a small role, he could make the frame feel heavier. After Body Double television finally found the right place for him. Hill Street Blues brought him closer to audiences, but NYPD Blue turned Dennis Franz into a legend. Andy Sipovich was not an easy man to love. He was rough, angry, full of flaws, but the longer you watched him, the more you saw that beneath that hard skin was a human being worn down by life. The role earned Franz 4 Emmy Awards and made him one of the most unforgettable cops in American television history. Then he did something very rare in Hollywood. He stopped. After NYPD Blue ended in 2005, Dennis Franz walked away from acting. He did not cling to the lights. He did not chase guest roles just to remind people who he was. He chose a private life with his wife Joni, far from the noise he once knew how to command so well. By 2026, Dennis Franz is 81 years old. He no longer needs to shout in any scene. Rubin once screamed into the darkness and Dennis Franz walked out of it. Barbara Crampton as Carol. Barbara Crampton's first movie role in Body Double is over almost before the audience has time to place her face, but the damage is immediate. She plays Carol, Jake Scully's girlfriend, the woman he comes home to, expecting comfort, only to find betrayal waiting in his own bedroom. It is a small role, brutally simple, but it does exactly what a Brian De Palma nightmare needs it to do. It pushes a fragile man out of ordinary heartbreak and straight into obsession. Carol is not in the film long enough to explain herself. That is why she works. She arrives like a clean cut. And then she vanishes. At the time, Crampton was still near the beginning of everything. She had studied theatre at Castleton State College, stepped through New York stage work, and moved toward Los Angeles with the hunger of an actress who had not yet been branded by any genre. Body Double became her film debut, but it was almost just the spark before the fire. Within a year, Reanimator turned her into Megan Halsey. And suddenly, horror fans were not just noticing her, they were claiming her. From Beyond Chopping Mall, Castle Freak, and later You're Next kept adding new layers to that strange crown people call Scream Queen. But Barbara's story is not one of a woman swallowed by horror. It is cleaner than that. Smarter. She stepped away at times, built a family life with her husband Robert Bleckman, raised 2 children, and later returned not as a relic, but as a producer, performer, and sharp-eyed champion of independent genre films. By 2026, she is 67, still active, still beloved at horror conventions, still carrying that rare gift, the ability to make a small role feel like a door opening. Some actors chase the spotlight. Barbara Crampton learned how to haunt it. Guy Boyd as Detective Jim McClane. Guy Boyd walks into Body Double with the face of a man who has already heard every lie in Los Angeles and is bored before the next one even starts. He plays Detective Jim McClane, and he does not bring warmth into the room. He brings pressure. Jake Scully has already been swallowed by humiliation, desire, murder, and one very bad habit of looking where he should not. Then McClane arrives, not like a savior, but like a man tapping the glass to see where it cracks. He watches Jake the way a mechanic listens to a broken engine. Quietly, closely, with almost no sympathy. That is what makes him stick. McClane is not a heroic cop polished for television. He is rougher, drier, a little amused by the mess in front of him. Guy Boyd gives him that wonderful, uncomfortable quality, the sense that he might help you, but only after making you sweat through the truth first. In a film full of fake identities and dirty-looking McClane is one of the few people who actually sees what is happening, and somehow that makes him nearly as unsettling as the criminals. Before Body Double, Boyd was already a serious actor, not a pretty boy Hollywood gamble. He had done the stage work, the character work, the kind of acting that does not beg for attention but earns it the hard way. Just a year earlier, he was part of the ensemble of Robert Altman's streamers sharing the Volpe Cup for Best Actor at the Venice Film Festival. That matters. You can feel it in him. He does not act like a man wearing authority. He acts like authority has made him tired. After De Palma's nightmare, Boyd kept doing what great character actors do. He survived by being useful, specific, and impossible to replace. Miami Vice, Pacific Heights, Black Scorpion, Foxcatcher, The Report. I'm Thinking of Ending Things, American Rust. He moved through decades of film and television without turning himself into a brand, and maybe that is why he lasted. No noise, no desperation, just scene after scene, role after role, more than 150 credits built like bricks in a wall. His son, John Boyd, followed him into acting too, which feels right. Some legacies are not shouted from red carpets, some are passed down in the discipline of showing up. By 2026, Guy Boyd is 83, still listed as active, still carrying the look of a man who can turn one quiet scene into a warning sign. Some actors own the spotlight, but Guy Boyd makes the shadows feel occupied. Lane Davies as Billy. Lane Davies steps into Body Double for only a few minutes, but he steps in like a man who knows exactly what kind of crazy movie he is in and decides to play along with it. He plays Billy, an adult film performer who appears as Jake Scully begins sliding deeper into the strange backstage world of Los Angeles. That scene could easily have become cheap. It could easily have turned into shock for the sake of shock. But Lane Davies does not play it that way. He gives Billy a mischievous smile, a bit of stage-trained confidence, and a wonderfully alert sense of humor, as if the character knows everyone in the room is pretending to be serious while the whole situation is far too absurd not to laugh at. And that is why the scene lives. In a movie full of voyeurism, obsession corpses, desire, and dirty tricks, Billy feels like a small crack where the audience can breathe. Not comedy that destroys the mood. Comedy that makes the nightmare feel more real, because in life, even the strangest moments usually have someone standing nearby, laughing at slightly the wrong time. Before Body Double Lane, Davies was not an unknown face. He was becoming a familiar name in daytime television as Mason Capwell on Santa Barbara, a role with enough charm, irony, and sharpness to stay in the memory of soap opera fans. But beneath that screen, elegance was a true theatre man. Shakespeare. Long speeches, rhythm, the ability to enter a scene like stepping onto a stage. Maybe that is why, even in a small role, he makes Billy feel as if he has a life outside the frame. After Body Double, Davies kept moving through television with his own quiet durability, General Hospital, The Bold, and The Beautiful Days of Our Lives, along with appearances in sitcoms like Seinfeld, The Golden Girls, and Third Rock from the Sun. But he never gave the impression of a man willing to sell his soul just to stay in Hollywood. He had somewhere else to return to. The stage, family, plays, smaller rooms maybe, but more honest ones. By 2026, Lane Davies is 75 years old. He no longer needs to prove he belongs under the big lights. Some actors want the whole world to see them. Lane Davies only needs the right stage to be himself. David Haskell as Will. David Haskell brings one of the gentlest interruptions in Body Double, which is saying something because almost nothing in that movie is gentle. He plays Will, the acting teacher, standing in front of a room full of performers trying to guide Jake Scully through the one thing Jake cannot fake his way past: fear. Not stage fright, not bad technique, real fear. The kind that crawls up from inside the body when a coffin lid closes and the air suddenly feels borrowed. In a film built on voyeurism, murder, and ugly desire. Will's workshop feels almost strange because it is sincere, and it seems that genuine sincerity is very important there. Haskell had earned it long before De Palma put him in that room. He was already known for Godspell both on stage and in the 1973 film, where he played John the Baptist and Judas Iscariot, two roles that demanded voice warmth, charm, and a little danger underneath the smile. He was not the kind of actor who needed to dominate a scene. He knew how to hold it open so someone else could break inside it. That is exactly what Will does for Jake. After Body Double, Haskell kept working, including his role as Nick Hartley on Santa Barbara and appearances in films like The Boost and K9. His life off-screen was tied to theatre and family too. He was married to Jeanne Lang, another Godspell performer. Public records describe a steady career, not a loud one. Sometimes that is the more honest kind. Then a cruel blow came to him. David Haskell died of brain cancer in Woodland Hills, California on August 30th, 2000. He was only 52. By 2026, his name survives in a quieter register in Godspell memories in old television credits, in that small Body Double classroom where fear was treated not as weakness, but as something worth understanding. Some actors leave thunder while David Haskell left warmth. Annette Haven as cameo and technical advisor. Annette Haven stands behind Body Double like a shadow the movie could not have existed without. She is not the star most viewers remember first. She does not belong to the central love story, the murder plot, or the final twist. But if Hollybody made Body Double unforgettable, Haven helped shape the reality beneath that fantasy. Brian De Palma was making a film about voyeurism performance. And the uneasy border between mainstream Hollywood and the adult film world and Haven came from that exact border carrying knowledge the movie could not fake. That is what makes her presence so charged. Before the film, Annette Haven had already become one of the notable figures of adult cinema during its 1970s and early 1980s expansion. De Palma considered her for the role of Hollybody, but the part ultimately went to Melanie Griffith. Columbia Pictures reportedly did not approve of Haven's casting, and De Palma later used Haven as an advisor during production. The American Film Institute notes that she acted as a consultant on the film, though, without screen credit. So when you watch Holly move through that strange half-lit world, you are also watching a performance touched by someone who understood it from the inside. Haven did not simply appear as a cameo. She helped translate a life Hollywood wanted to borrow but not fully embrace. After Body Double, Haven's mainstream visibility remained limited, but her influence within adult film history endured. She was later recognized in both the AVN and XRCO Halls of Fame, a sign of how firmly her name stayed attached to that era. By 2026, public details about her private life remain limited, and they should probably stay that way. Hollybody became the image, while Annette Haven was part of the truth behind it. By the time Body Double faded from the screen, its cast had scattered into very different shadows. Some found reinvention, some chose quiet lives, some became familiar faces only years later, and a few left behind careers that now feel unfinished. What connects them is not just fame or failure, or the strange afterlife of a cult film, it is the price of being watched. Because Body Double was always about looking too closely. The cruel irony is that some of its most haunting people were never truly seen at all. Which story hit you the hardest, the comeback, the disappearance, or the life cut short? And after everything we now know, was that telescope showing Jake a murder? Or was it showing us what Hollywood does to people?